like gift of time together, that they're fine with letting me tell people about the organization, because they're newer and they're trying to give gifts of time away and help people, that, women that have breast cancer and their families get a weekend away. So
Nice.
we can, if you want, we can drop that name too, so people can have a resource for, an outreach, and their gift to people is gift of time, a weekend together, whether it's in a cabin or an indoor water park or whatever it is, that they help families make that happen.
Well, yeah, I mean, I definitely want to talk about that because one of the unique points that we discussed in your journey is that the family being impacted often is not discussed as far part of the process of having breast cancer, going through multiple surgeries, and everyone kind of having to pitch in as a team, but in some ways, the kids having to know and get an understanding that something's happening with mommy, and just kind of how that rebalances the household, or not. And all right, so let's just talk about that for a moment. Let's just get a synopsis of your story, and then how that impact was on the family, because I think you have a very not unique, but we all, everyone traverses this area, this journey very differently. And just where you were in the living, breathing family that you have, and the timing of this, couldn't be less convenient, right? It's never convenient. Uh,
Right. Never a convenient time to get cancer, for sure.
Never.
But in the February 2021 is when I finally went to the doctor. So I had found this lump, and it was actually, you couldn't feel it to the touch. You do
Mm,
your own tests in the shower, and your own exams, or lying on a bed, but it wasn't on the surface. I couldn't feel
mm,
anything. But when I got into my bra, bending over and getting in, I thought, oh my gosh, what is that? But I
mm,
didn't want to freak out. I let it go a few weeks. Maybe it's just one of those things that just goes away and you don't want to blow it up into a big deal.
mm-hmm,
And I finally went, and that was in February. In October, right before that, I had my annual mammogram. So
mm,
I was not behind my
mm.
mammograms.
Oh,
And that's not very far, but it was just a regular standard mammogram.
mhm,
And I went to the doctor, and there was a lot of speculation of if the whole thing was cancer, because at that point it was already 7 centimeters, or if part of it was cancer. There was a lot of biopsies done, there was ultrasounds, and finally 3D imaging. And the 3D imaging is what led them to believe that the entire thing was cancer. And I can't believe that 3D imaging is not being done now, typically all the time for women under 50. But I was diagnosed, and my kids at that time were 4 and 7. I've been married for, it was 11 years at that time. And I found out when I was at work looking at my chart online,
mm.
and I found the results before the doctor called me. And I left work and I came home, and I remember falling into Jeremy's arms at the door and just, I said, I have it. And I just collapsed. And it was
Mm.
like the most heartbreaking time. We tried to keep the kids out of the loop for as long as possible while I was getting those biopsies done, and figuring everything out, because if there's nothing to worry them, why start?
Exactly. Yeah, yeah.
But then it was real.
Mm.
It was real.
Okay.
And there were so many biopsies that had to be done, and my case was brought to the cancer board on several occasions, because I just had some other things going on, and it was in my lymph nodes, and they just couldn't believe the size of that tumor, and how, from October from my mammogram even to February when we found it to May when I started chemo. At that point it was almost 14 centimeters now by the time I started chemo,
And what
and
did
in two of my
what
lymph.
did they, what did they attribute to such expeditious growth?
That's why I kept going to the cancer board. They had it. I have hormone receptor positive, and I have a very high chance of recurrence, but no one in my family has breast cancer, and I don't carry the gene for breast cancer.
Hmm.
So I don't really think that, it's only, a lot of people think that it's really only exclusive to that. And if you have the gene or if it's in the family, and yes, that can be a factor, but you need to be careful no matter what. You
Absolutely.
need to be checking and really looking into things and being your own advocate.
Absolutely.
Um, that right now, all doctors are into breast sparing surgeries,
Mm,
meaning, I mean, my right breast was not salvageable at all. The nipple, the breast, the whole thing was not salvageable. But they tried to get me to keep my left breast,
mm,
and they tell you that getting breast cancer, there's a 12% chance of getting breast cancer.
mm.
Well, if I have it, that's 100%.
Right.
And then they say, well, then it's only, like 6% chance on the other side. It's very low, 3 to 6% chance. Well, in my mind, that's like 50%.
Mm,
So I had it removed. And when they did the biopsy on that breast, I had invasive lobular carcinoma in situ. So I was already starting, um, the precancer cells were already starting and forming in that breast. And so what happens is they really try to get you to spare the all the breast tissue you can. They
mm,
don't want to take any unnecessary breast tissue. But in my experience, and the people that I've seen that haven't done it now have, when cancer comes back in the breast, it comes back with a vengeance
mm.
and spreads. So I would, do what's right for you, and don't always think that the doctor has to make the decision for you.
That's a
In my journey started with chemotherapy first to shrink the tumor because it had grown so far. So I went through 2 rounds of chemo, and then I went into my bilateral mastectomy, which I had on my birthday of 2021. Um, and waking up from that was the one that I dreaded
mm.
the most out of the entire journey that I knew was going to happen, which, by the way, when you're diagnosed, you can only process one step at a time. Don't try to take in the whole journey at once. It's just too much.
Right.
But I remember waking up, and I was dreading in my mind having my husband see me this way, having to look down and, there not be anything there.
Mm,
And they do put chest expanders in because they start to try to expand your skin so that your body can handle an implant, but there's still nothing there. And you want to try to find a doctor that's very aggressive with the bilateral mastectomy, that is just going to leave skin. You don't want you don't want tissue left over in your breast. And there's some doctors that are more aggressive than others, which I found out in my journey as well. But waking up and having dreams coming out and going home with those, and um, the most painful part of the process of that was the first time I had to get in the shower. I still couldn't look at myself. Probably a week and a half had gone by, and just sponge bathe. And then when it's time and I had to take off my shirt and have Jeremy, he had to help me get all my bandages off. And you have to put your drains and the bulbs, and you put these things around your neck and you stuff the bulbs and the drains in there so you can wear it around your neck. But the fact that I couldn't look down and I knew that he was looking at me,
Mm.
I just had tears rolling down
Mm.
my face that I just couldn't stop. It was just heartbreaking,
Mm.
just heartbreaking. And since then, I don't know, it's been at least 18 to 19 surgeries that I've had in total. Of course, there's been some other issues besides just breast cancer,
Mhm.
but it's just one step at a time. But that was probably the most heartbreaking for me, is being that vulnerable and having that image of that body image of what you think that you look like, and you still can't look down, and having somebody see that, the person that you love the most, have to take that in,
Mm.
and you're not the same person anymore. I mean, your heart is, but you going through this, you're still not the same person. It just changes you, but it can bring you closer. It can definitely bring a family closer.
I was going to ask you, what do you think the most magnanimous change was for you? And do you still struggle to look down?
I don't struggle to look down anymore. I've
Okay.
had I've had, let's see, three. Well, I did have one of my chest expander rupture during radiation.
Hmm.
After I had my bilateral mastectomy, I had my total hysterectomy a month later. And then I started 5 weeks of radiation, and I just happened to have one of my chest expanders rupture during that. So then I had to go in for another surgery to get the expander put in and start expanding again before we could even do reconstruction. So I've had 3 reconstructive surgeries at this point. I just had one September 18th,
Mm.
with fat grafting, but I can look down now.
Okay.
Um, I think one of the hardest things is talking to your kids about it and the family dynamic. And it just, talking to my kids at 4 and 7 during the middle of a pandemic was a little confusing for them. They didn't, but in our case, it was, we wanted to be as honest as possible with the kids, but in the most basic terms that we knew how.
Mhm.
Um, of course, Charlie, she's our youngest daughter. She gets a little confused. She was saying, "My mommy has COVID." I was like, "No, mom has cancer." When did COVID become worse? I don't know. But being as honest as possible, and really kind of explaining that my body is under attack, and my cells are growing differently and rapidly, and I have to go through this surgery, and making resources available for them.
Mm.
There's the Gathering Place. I'm in Ohio. The Gathering Place is in Ohio, and you can have that for yourself. You can go for yoga and massages, but they also have a lot of family activities and children activities.
Mm.
Um, making the counselor at school aware so that they have someone that they could talk to. I'm in and out of the hospital a lot, so Frankie just sometimes going to do origami and talking about it in the middle of the school day has helped her significantly.
Mm.
We, as a family, made it kind of a pact, our rule, that we are going to travel more than ever now, and just take advantage of any and all family time we can, and accept the help from all of the resources that are out there. Um, when I first went into chemo, a social worker came in and explained and gave us all of these resources and said, "Hey, I think you would be a candidate for XYZ." And and said you should apply for all of it and take advantage of all of the resources and all of the foundations that are out there to help people just in your situation.